Hi, my name is Russell Allen. I'm the founder and owner of Aurelia Group Consulting. Today we're going to spend 5 minutes talking about what you should know about Starch addition. Here's a graph that shows property improvement in paper with starch addition as it's increased. And there are really three areas in starch addition. The first amount that you would add, say we're talking about wet end starch addition at the moment, is pretty much lost to the system. It's used up by anions and other chemistry in the wet end. The second area is the cost-effective area. This is the area where relatively small amounts of starch will give you good property improvement. Things like compression strength, Scott ply bond, Concora, things like that. And then as you add more and more starch, unfortunately, that starch becomes less effective. It's an ineffective area. What we would really like to do is stay in the yellow area, the cost-effective area. The second thing we have to realise is the starch effect is related to base sheet quality. If I have a poor base sheet, for instance if I have a 100% recycled base sheet, the property improvement with a certain amount of starch can be very great. If I have a 100% virgin sheet, high quality fibres and good bonding, we only see very small amounts of improvement. So going from 100% recycled to 100% virgin, if we just look at the percent improvement from the base sheet, we see that virgin fibre doesn't give us as much with starch as the recycled fibre. The third thing we need to know is that different properties respond differently to the same amount of starch addition. So here's an example. We've got burst and Concora and ply bond, tensile and SCT. And you can see that of them all, burst will respond the most as a percentage improvement to starch addition. Here's three ideas to use that knowledge to save money. First thing is, optimize your starch profile. If you get starch further into the sheet, you'll have less ineffective starch and you'll be more in the cost-effective zone we were talking about before. Here's an example for properties of tensile and bending stiffness. In this case, example 1, which is the blue performance trace, showing the profile of starch through the sheet, we get 6%, but if we were to use the grey profile, we would get 13%. For bending stiffness, minus 0.5% for the blue and 0.25%, very little change for the grey. So different properties will respond differently to the profile of starch through the paper sheet. The second thing you can do is optimize your furnish and starch cost. Believe it or not, sometimes it's possible to increase your performance by adding recycled fibre and a small amount of starch. And here's an example of that happening where the x-axis is the waste fraction, the left-hand axis is the dollar tonne per saving, and the right-hand axis is the GM predicted property index with the same amount of starch. And you can see that the dollar per tonne saving increases as the waste fraction increases. But the actual performance of predicted property index, in this case it will be burst and a compression strength, remain pretty much the same, and in the case of burst actually increase. The third thing we need to know is that you can optimize your furnish and starch cost, and one way of doing that is to actually take the saving you have by adding recycled fibre and increasing the basis weight. You'll still end up with either the same cost or a very much improved performance in, say, burst and compression strength. The third thing you can do is make sure the starch you add is effective. And the way we can do that is by monitoring it continuously. The PSM4 continuous stiffness measure sits on your machine, and every second of every day it measures the quality of your paper. Here's an example of a comparison between burst by continuous PSM measurement and a lab burst which is taken top of reel. And you can see that the information is much greater for the continuous measurement, as you'd expect. Here's a new idea using the PSM4. Because we measure continuously, we can put tiny changes into starch addition levels and measure whether we have sensitive increases in property from that. Using this, we can tell whether we're in the ineffective, the cost-effective, or the loss to the system part of our starch addition. That means we can continuously monitor and trim our starch addition to be the most cost-effective that we can have. Here's a plot overlaid on that on the sensitivity. What we would really like to be is high on that property improvement peak, the cost-effective area of our addition. So, feel free to contact us. We'd love to talk to you about how we can save you money.